Very good morning to all of you and welcome to IIM Bangalore. Let me just give you a little bit of background about this conference before we go on to the formal inauguration. As many of you would know, the Persons with Disabilities Act requires all educational institutions to reserve 3% of their places for persons with disability. And we at IIM started implementing this a little over 10 years ago. In fact, my involvement with this whole disability center really started off at that time, because as I'm sure Devnath would remember, both of us were part of a team from IIM who was summoned by the Disabilities Commissioner at Delhi to ask us why we had not started implementing the Disabilities Act earlier. And in fact, it's only after, to be honest, only after we got that summons that we actually started following the act roughly from about 2000. So Devnath was at that time representing IIM Ahmedabad and I had gone on behalf of IIM Bangalore, and that's how I first got involved with this. So once we started implementing the act, of course, we have been doing that on an annual basis. But what we found over time is that while we were, of course, admitting students with disabilities, we were not really doing anything inside the institute to help them make the education process smoother. Whatever was being done on a very ad hoc kind of basis. Some professors were more helpful than others. They tried to help the students with notes and with any other support they required. Where the professors were not very sensitive, it was just left to chance. So a few years ago, the institute decided that we need to take a more proactive role in making sure that all students with disabilities get as equivalent experience, the same educational experience that all our other students get. In other words, we wanted to make sure that students with disabilities were not in any way handicapped by their disability and were able to take full advantage of the education at IIMB. So it's with this objective in mind that we set up a committee on disability a few years ago, to be specific in 2009. And shortly thereafter, we were perhaps the first institute in India to release a policy statement regarding students with disabilities, which is posted on our website, which lays out very clearly what we will do, what kind of facilities we will provide, and how we will make sure that the institute provides a much more conducive environment to all students with disabilities. So in pursuance of that, when the Committee on Disability was set up, I was the first chairman of that committee. And we then had the challenge of how do we really go about doing this. At that time, I was fortunate, I started looking around. I wanted to see what were the examples, who were the organizations or institutions we could emulate. And I did visit a few universities. For example, I visited JNU, where I found they had certainly very good facilities to support students who were visually handicapped. But then we were just struggling, how do we go about setting up a place which will be much more friendly to people with disability on a more consistent basis, so that it just didn't depend on individual initiative, but was really embedded in the system. Then I was fortunate that I attended a meeting of the CII Disability Forum, where SEBI and several others who were present here today were part of that meeting. And that's when we started trying to find out what is the best way to embed support for disabilities inside the institution. And we were lucky that Meenu from Emphasis, who's again been one of our most important supporters, was present at that meeting. And she had the experience of studying in US universities, where a lot of this is actually being put in place many, many years ago. So when I went to attend that meeting, Meenu was very excited, and she said, why don't we try and replicate what is being done in US universities here in IIM Bangalore. So that's how this whole effort towards setting up the Office of Disability Services took off. And one thing led to another when we decided to set up the office itself. Thanks to Meenu's support, and I'm really delighted that Ganesh Iyer is with us here today. Emphasis was very enthusiastic in coming forward to support us financially, and though the finance of course was important, but what I think was really much more important were the ideas and the kind of spirit of cooperation which has gone into the support that Emphasis and several other organizations have provided us over time. So when we set up the ODS, which happened about 6-7 months later, the ODS was inaugurated in January 2010. What we have tried to do now is put in place a system where every time a student with disability gets admitted, and we of course admit about 10 to 12 students every year, which is 3% of our MBA class, we do an assessment of these students and understand what is the kind of support we need to provide them during their stay here, so that they are able to take full advantage of the course and curriculum which we offer. And again, I would like to mention Meenu and Ramachari, who have both been very supportive to us in doing this assessment every year and helping us identify what are the ways in which we need to support these students. So the next challenge is, once we have identified the ways in which they need support, how do we get it embedded in the system so that students don't have to run around and ask for that help? It's theirs as a matter of right. Now there I cannot say that we are 100% perfect today, far from it. We are on a learning track where we are trying to put in place all these systems. In certain respects we have been quite successful, in certain others we have a long way to go. But what we are trying to do is to make that happen. And some of our students are here. Prakash is here sitting in the front row. I saw Swati somewhere, I don't know where, I lost track of her somewhere along the way. But you should talk to them and find out how successful we have been, and also find out from them what are the areas in which we need to improve, because there are several. And yeah, Swati, hi, I can see you now. Yeah, okay. And so we certainly need to figure out how to do that better. So I must also acknowledge the support we've had from the Institute in doing this, right from our director, who is very enthusiastic about this from the beginning, to our faculty, who have by and large been supportive. Of course, there are still some of them who are suspicious of what we are doing, but it's kind of improved over time. And I think generally we are certainly moving in the right direction. So when we got the support from Emphasis, one of the things that the Emphasis team was very keen on is that we should not only be doing things in IIM, but we should also act as a catalyst for these ideas to spread outside IIM. So we had agreed right at the beginning that somewhere along the way we will do a conference where we will bring in people from other institutions, from the corporate sector, and of course from NGOs and other organizations who are strongly involved in working with the disabled, to figure out how do we take this forward, how do we get other institutions to adopt better practices and make their institutions more disabled friendly. So this is that conference. It's the first step towards trying to spread the word around. We've had some good response from some institutions, others not so good. But we've been very fortunate in the support we have got from our corporate sponsors. I would like to say a special word of thanks to Emphasis, to Microsoft, Wipro and Thomson Reuters, all of whom very enthusiastically, without any urging from our side, agreed to support this conference and have been very generous in their support. And some of our existing partners like the CII and NASCOM, and also ITC Limited, who have also been helpful to us in organizing this event here today. So that's the background. The whole idea is to exchange ideas, to exchange what we have done, all of us, learn from each other, and then hopefully tomorrow afternoon we all pledge to take all these ideas and try and make sure that more and more institutions adopt all the good things that we talk about during the conference. So that's really the objective. So let me once again welcome all of you to IIMB, and let me now request our Dean Academic, Professor Devnath Tirupati. Our director unfortunately couldn't be here with us today because he had another engagement, but Professor Tirupati is here representing the director and of course also being the head of the academic stream of our institution. Professor Tirupati is a very renowned scholar in the field of operations. He has a PhD from MIT, taught at University of Texas at Austin, has taught at IIM Ahmedabad for many years, and he joined us here about 2.5 years ago, and he's currently the Dean Academic. Professor Tirupati.